Trixie's Forest Retreat. By Crow's Crow. Chapter 127. Reply. Fresh air at last. Trixie squinted against the sun while attempting to navigate her way through Ponyville's streets. It was refreshing to feel the cool breeze caress her fur after spending so long cooped up in the spa. Like everything else in there, they seemed to import the atmosphere from some foreign land as well, a hot one in this case. Admittedly, Trixie could not argue with the results. Especially while looking over her shoulder at the somehow even more radiant little kitty that followed her. Fluttershy's fur had always looked soft, but after they left the humid building her fur had finally dried and gained the kind of slight puffiness to it that one could normally only find on the world's cutest puppy. It was no small task for Trixie to restrain herself from hugging her in public. After the spa treatment was over, Rarity had stayed behind for some reason, but Helper fully encouraged the two of them to leave without her. A sentiment that Trixie greatly appreciated as she all but pushed Fluttershy out the door. While Trixie was not in a particular hurry to return, she had to admit she really enjoyed getting pampered the way she had been in the spa. Of course, Trixie would prefer to do so with just Fluttershy by her side, but she could tolerate Rarity's presence if that's what it took. It had taken some time, but they'd found some common ground in their mutual passion for fame and fortune through their trade. Fluttershy had agreed to let Trixie try her hoof at getting them to their destination this time. Admittedly, this would have been a much bigger responsibility if Trixie could not see the gigantic building she wanted to go to as soon as she stepped out the door. Ponyville Town Hall stood alone in the middle of the plaza. It was easily the tallest building around for miles, even when discounting the spire tacked on top of it, which Trixie felt was cheating anyway. Aside from its height, the building also had a distinctly different make than most of the others in that it was round as a tower rather than square like the surrounding shops. Maybe this was a bad idea. She didn't really have to go there right now. Maybe it would be better to just wait for a... Trixie wasn't really sure what passed for law enforcement around these parts. Sheriff? Police? Royal Guard? Lynch mob? Philly Guides? Trixie had no idea. Anyway, she could probably wait for one of those to drag her in there. This was basically turning herself in. Innocent ponies didn't turn themselves in, did they? No. Why was she doing this again? She should just go home. Trixie. Should we be going? I mean, it's okay if you don't want to. We can stay here, that's okay too. Realizing she'd been listlessly standing still in the middle of the road, Trixie took a couple of swift steps forward. Oh, yes. No. Trixie was just admiring the building, yes. Trixie was definitely not at all getting cold hooves about this whole thing. She just, well, thought it would be a longer trip. But, you knew it was right there. You looked at it before we came in and you said that Trixie would go there as soon as we were done. Trixie knows. Trixie turned around and threw up her hooves in frustration, causing Fluttershy to flinch back with her ears flat. A bucket of ice water couldn't have been more sobering. Trixie carefully brushed Fluttershy's mane out of her face. Sorry, Trixie didn't mean to shout at you. It's okay. I wasn't scared, just, startled. Cause the yelling. Fluttershy offered a kind smile. If you just want to prolong the trip to Town Hall a little bit. Maybe we could take a detour through the market? I think Applejack is working her stall today too. If you want to. Yes, perfect. This way she'd have some time to collect her thoughts and steel her nerves. Besides, there was nothing wrong with deciding to see a friend first. It was totally not running away if she planned to return later. A tactical retreat, yes. It'll be nice to talk with good old Applejack. Speaking with Rarity was exhausting. I don't know how you and Rarity do it. There was almost more yelling than talking. It's confusing. She pawed at the ground for a moment, then looked back to Trixie. I can't really tell if you are friends or enemies. I'm sorry. Oh, Well, allow Trixie to enlighten you, Trixie said while she nimbly slid up beside Fluttershy and slipped a hoof around her. She was every bit as soft and fluffy as Trixie imagined, but like a true professional it only distracted her for 1 or 2 forevers. You see, it's not the same between unicorns as it is for every pony else. We're very intricate. Earth pony relations are simple, Pegasus ones are a little more flighty but still quite simple. However, between unicorns it is like a constant chess match, except you can't see all of the pieces. Glancing briefly at Trixie's hoof, Fluttershy looked around nervously as other ponies passed by. See chess? I think I understood your answer. I'm sorry. It's a board game that. I know what chess is. Fluttershy muttered under her breath. Never mind. Of course you do. It was a joke. Ha, ha. Trixie chuckled awkwardly. She hadn't really expected Fluttershy to say anything, but perhaps she shared Trixie's hatred of being condescended to. She'd have to try to keep that in mind. What Trixie meant to say was, it's complicated. The look of profound confusion on Fluttershy's face left Trixie to reconsider her strategy. It probably wasn't wise to try to explain it all to her. As a Pegasus, she probably wouldn't understand, and even if she did it wasn't the answer she wanted. No, Trixie already knew the answer she actually wanted to hear. Yes, we are friends. Oh, that's good. Fluttershy showed that lovely smile again, confirming that Trixie had made the right choice. The trip to the market was short, and it did not take long to find Applejack's stall. After all, the only thing one had to do was follow the sound of "Get your delicious nutritious apples here." Well, if it isn't the little hayseed hard at work, Trixie said amiably while trotting up to the stall. Applejack wasn't alone either. That little sister of hers was there as well, looking decidedly bored. And the miniature edition too. What luck! That earned her a glare from the little filly. Howdy do, strangers. Applejack tipped her hat. Well, don't the two of you look nice na, clean? You'll still whatchamacallit? Incognito? No, Trixie is about to speak to the mayor anyway, so allowing her cover to be blown 5 minutes early won't matter. Trixie didn't mention the reverse was true. It served as a little bit of extra incentive not to chicken out and to actually go see the mayor. If every pony knew who she was anyway, she might as well turn herself in. Not that that was what she was doing, of course. She was innocent. Fluttershy offered a quiet nod. She might have said something, but if so the clamor of the market drowned it out. Oh? Well, good luck with that, Sugar Cube. Can I interest you in some apples? A good apple always calms my nerves. You know Trixie can't afford any, Trixie groaned. She wasn't even really sure what she was doing here. Well, that wasn't true, she was stalling. At a stall. Unless you take payment in amazement and wonder. Applejack rubbed her chin as she considered the offer. Well, I ain't one to usually go for this kind of thing, but Apple Bloom's been grouchy all day, she said while tussling her little sister's fire mane, who deftly ducked out of her reach. So, I'll tell you what, if you make her smile, I'll consider it payment. How about that? I ain't grouchy, I'm bored. Apple Bloom yawned and leaned her head against the side of the stall. Why'd I think this'd be fun anyway? All you done is stand here yelling apples for ages. Ain't like a sideshow's gonna help. Trixie had not expected Applejack to take her seriously, and she wasn't all that interested in performing a trick on the spot. However, seeing as Apple Bloom was so dismissive of her, it was practically a challenge to her talents. Besides, any chance to show off in front of Fluttershy was a good excuse. The great and powerful Trixie gracefully accepts your offer. She winked at Fluttershy briefly and then turned her attention to the little bored filly. Apple Bloom, yes. What if Trixie told you she can tell the future? You'd be a liar, the filly deadpanned. Apple Bloom. Applejack scolded. What? It's true. Pointing a hoof at Trixie, Apple Bloom stared up at her big sister. You'll know it's what she does. For a living, no less. It's a rotten thing to do, you said so yourself. Look, it ain't as if. What I mean is. Applejack turned back to Trixie and gave her an uncomfortable smile. 2 apples were plucked from the baskets on either side of her and pushed across the counter. Here you are. I reckon she's more lively now, so, you earned it. Trixie raised an eyebrow as she witnessed the exchange. Applejack's obvious discomfort stung, as she hadn't denied the accusation at all and was clearly trying to get rid of Trixie. Magically grasping the offered apples, Trixie inspected them idly. Trixie's not sure about these, they look rotten, she said coldly, locking eyes with Applejack. Land sakes, Trixie, you really want to get into this? Right here? Applejack pushed herself away from the counter. Yes, I said it. You happy now? Twist before I actually talk to you, alright? If it's all saying to you, I'd rather not get into any arguments with you. Oh, that changes everything. Trixie smiled smugly. Trixie will forgive you for failing to recognize her greatness on first sight. At least you know better now. Apple Bloom rolled her eyes, the little brat. I sure do think more highly of you now than I did then. That's the truth. Applejack said with a crooked smile. The poor mare must have been working harder than Trixie thought, given how much she was sweating. Trixie passed one of the apples to Fluttershy. That's good enough for Trixie. She bit into the apple while she looked down her muzzle at Apple Bloom. It wasn't very nice of her to make her doubt Applejack. No tricks for you. But maybe. Applejack looked and sounded as though the words had escaped from a grueling prison and was spreading the word of all her darkest secrets. I mean, A treacherous piece of apple threatened to choke Trixie, and it was only through valiant struggle that she managed to expel the fiend. Her attention swiftly turned from apple to apple. Treachery in all. What? Applejack scratched the back of her head while pointedly avoiding eye contact with Trixie. Well, I mean, I get that you're passionate about your job, all. I reckon it's true you work hard, which is good. I respect that, Trixie. It's just. Applejack looked like she was bracing herself to light a powder keg. Them stories about yourself that ain't true. I still don't approve. Apple Bloom had the smudgiest face Trixie had ever seen on a filly. Trixie returned the half-eaten apple to the counter. She'd never liked apples. They could look all nice and shiny on the outside, promising sweetness, but still taste bitter when you took a bite. Trixie thought we'd talked this over already. No, Applejack shook her head. You're the only one that talked. I don't want you to misunderstand, Trixie. You said a lot of things I hadn't thought about, but it wasn't no discussion. I wasn't comfortable saying what I thought at the time, on account of the fact that you had a long dinner. Excitement was clearly bad for you. Frankly, I still ain't sure I want to get into it. It was a strange sensation. Trixie thought she would have been more outraged to have someone she trusted betray her like that. All this time, Applejack had fooled her into thinking they got along. That they were friends. Yet, she wasn't burning with rage, no, she was calm. Cool. Cold. Get into it. Phew, well, since you asked all. The tone of relief in Applejack's voice indicated she'd all but left her fallout shelter. I had a long time to think about what you said that night. Like how boasting is part of Thashona, that it won't no different from me when I'm selling apples. I reckon that's true to a point. But, there's a difference between saying these apples are the finest in Equestria and saying these apples will cure whatever ails you, right? Of course. Trixie said shortly, the tension in her body causing her to press the ridges of her hooves into the ground. She could scarcely believe she was standing here listening to Applejack compare her to a common snake oil salesman. As if Trixie hasn't suffered enough indignities for one day. Trixie thought she could count on others. What a mistake. She should have learned this by now. No pony is actually on Trixie's side. Trixie was just fooling hers. The sensation of the deep rigid cold in her body melting under a gentle warmth spreading from her back derailed Trixie's train of thought. A quick glance revealed Fluttershy's wing wrapped around her. Although Fluttershy didn't say anything, Trixie didn't need any words to know the sweet thing had sensed her distress. Offering up a smile, Trixie leaned into her carefully, seeking comfort beneath her wing. By the same token, I just can't abide the notion that you're going round telling folks things you know ain't so. You're a great magician. You made my bathroom disappear in my own house for Pete's sake. I reckon it shows plenty amazing when you're just being truthful about yourself. She tapped her hoof on the wooden counter. Also, there's the part where you called us up on your stage. Now I'll get how you felt. We were jerks. Wouldn't right of us to heckle you like that when we called our left. Nah, I'll even say a slice of humble pie was just what we ordered. That's right. Trixie nodded. That was always a popular part of Trixie's show. Taking ponies down a peg when their talent gets compared to that of the great and powerful Trixie. But you were a tad too mean-spirited in the way you went about that. Applejack added. In fact, it wouldn't kill you to be a little nicer in general. You never even apologized for any of it, even though we did. In fact, you said once you ain't sorry for anything. So, in conclusion, Trixie is a lying jerk. Trixie deadpanned. Consign it, I didn't say that. Applejack looked exasperated. Just cause I think you have a few faults don't mean I don't like you. We've all got some. In that case, Trixie turned away from the apple stall, unfortunately slipping out from under Fluttershy's wing in the process. Just because Trixie is leaving doesn't mean she doesn't like you. With a whip of her tail, she walked away with her nose held high. She was better than this. Trixie, come on now. Applejack called after her. I'm sorry. I'll talk to her. Fluttershy assured Applejack before she left as well. Meanwhile, Trixie stomped off. The marketplace wasn't that big, but the sooner she got to the other side of it the better. If only ponies didn't keep obstructing her progress. Why is it so busy anyway? Don't these dirt ponies have somewhere better to be than in Trixie's way? She muttered to herself while pushing through the crowd. Trying to keep up with Trixie's rapid pace proved too difficult for Fluttershy. She lagged behind. The constant sound of ponies all around her was driving Trixie up the wall. Peace and quiet, that's what she needed to process this nonsense. As much as she enjoyed performing in front of a crowd, she had always made sure her wagon was nearby. Its walls were made of thick wood that dampened the outside world, creating a small bubble of solitude. She warned even her staunchest admirers she was not to be disturbed when she isolated herself in there. But her wagon was gone, and the peaceful haven of the cottage was too far away. Reaching the edge of the marketplace, Trixie's eyes fell upon the buildings that now barred her way. A few main roads funneled noisy ponies in and out of the square, but there were less traveled paths. The alleyways between the buildings looked quiet and inviting. Without pause, Trixie slipped into the shade of the nearest alleyway and turned a corner. From here she was out of sight and the noise of ponies shopping for carrots was slightly muffled as well. It wasn't ideal, but short of breaking into some pony's basement, Trixie didn't think it was going to get any better. That would be wrong, right? Actually, there was a better way. Trixie had been forbidden from casting spells for so long that she had nearly forgotten she could do that now. Oh, wait. Duh. Her horn lit up, spreading a faint orchid light that soon dissipated and took all the noise in the world with it. Well, all the noise outside of her little soundproof bubble at least. That's better. Trixie smirked while inspecting her work. A little trick that Trixie picked up from her old professor. Did you know he never actually taught Trixie how to do this, Fluttershy? Trixie copied it. That's just how amazing she is. Anything you can do, I can do better, indeed. Fluttershy? Trixie looked around. Even with the shade, There were not a lot of places to hide in the alley, and Fluttershy wasn't anywhere to be found. Fluttershy? Oh, come on. You were right behind Trixie. Trixie stomped her hoof down impatiently as she trotted back a few steps towards the marketplace and tried to spot the familiar pink and yellow tones. Obviously, it was no use. Yet one more problem she was going to have to add to the list of things she had to think about. Maybe the answer would present itself. Trixie trotted further down the alley again. Now that she knew she was alone, the place seemed darker and colder than before. Even the silence of her cell felt eerie, and Trixie's thoughts involuntarily wandered back to when she'd left the hospital. A trio of ponies had cornered her in an alley much like this one. This was a bad idea. From the corner of her eye, Trixie caught movement behind her. "Though Fluttershy?" Trixie whispered with a tremor as she quickly turned around. Of course, it wasn't Fluttershy at all. Instead, Apple Bloom stood in the middle of the alley, flapping her gums. It was a silly sight, given that Trixie couldn't hear anything she was saying while the spell was active. Apple Bloom seemed to be getting pretty heated as she kept making more grand gestures and stomping her tiny hoof on the ground. It was actually kind of amusing, though Trixie's smile seemed to agitate the little filly further. After savoring the weirdly adorable display for a while, Trixie decided that Apple Bloom's impression of an angry goldfish was starting to become rather one-note. The filly wasn't showing any signs of slowing down, however. This wasn't quite what Trixie had in mind when she went looking for some peace and quiet, but having just one filly distracting her was much easier to tune out than a whole town. The chances of her finding a more secluded spot were slim anyway. She was actually kind of nice to look at, like an angry little lava lamp. Trixie watched the filly's antics while allowing her thoughts to return to her original objective. First things first. Trixie appears to have lost Fluttershy. It was definitely a problem, but if Apple Bloom apparently had no problem finding her, then Trixie could assume Fluttershy would reach them eventually. Most likely she was just trapped in a near-endless loop of apologizing and yielding the right of way to every pony she met. Essentially, all Trixie had to do was wait. Much like how as a filly she was told to stay put in the event she ever got lost. That just left the Apple family. It was painfully clear that all the mares of that family just loved to give their honest opinions on things. As evidenced by Apple Bloom's continued yapping. Trixie wasn't sure what she was saying, but it probably was no less insulting than the things Applejack told her. Trixie didn't understand where it came from. Trixie thought Applejack was her friend. Why were they trying to hurt her feelings with lies? If Applejack really felt that way, she should have said so from the start, not snake their way into Trixie's good graces only to backstab her later. What is with ponies fighting with Trixie today? First rarity, now this. Is Trixie wearing a kick me sign? Actually, now that she thought about it, Applejack had mentioned something like that. Something about keeping her opinions to herself to spare Trixie any extra stress during her recovery. Trixie had dismissed it at the time as an obvious lie from the traitor, but maybe it did fit. Trixie nodded slowly. She was better now, so Applejack felt she could talk to her about it. If doing so sooner would have affected Trixie's health, then that could only mean Applejack cared about her, right? Otherwise she wouldn't have waited. Come to think of it. Didn't Trixie tell her to speak her mind? Trixie bit her lip as she thought about the things she accused Applejack of afterwards. Sure, the simple farm pony had said some things Trixie disagreed with, but maybe Rarity had said similar things, and it couldn't be a coincidence, could it? It was an awfully convenient thing the two ponies both said the same thing to her on the same day in the same way. Oh, sure, maybe they were right. Maybe they were just trying to help Trixie with some friendly advice, or maybe they are conspiring against Trixie. She shook her head, attempting to dispel the dark thoughts. No. Applejack wouldn't have said anything if Trixie didn't ask. Besides, there's no way they'd know Trixie would even go to the market today. That was, of course, unless Fluttershy was in on it too. After all, she suggested going to the market. What if this had all been some elaborate ruse? All her supposed friends were actually playing some kind of trick on her. They didn't care. They were just trying to manipulate Trixie. Trying to make her change her ways through petty deceit. Trixie's chest ached fiercely at the thought of such terrible betrayal. Maybe that was why Fluttershy wasn't here. They realized Trixie had seen through their trickery. Tears welled up in her eyes as she clutched her chest. She couldn't breathe. No. Stop it. Stop thinking like this. This isn't. This is different. Don't panic. Wait, that's it. Panic. That's all this is. Calm down. Easier said than done. Her mind raced in every which direction, piling on more and more convincing evidence and spinning further out of control. Slight pauses in Fluttershy's speech became incriminating proofs of disingenuous intentions. Seemingly innocuous teasing compliments from Rainbow Dash became backhanded. The sudden sound of approaching hoofsteps startled Trixie, causing her to lose concentration on her silence spell. With a soap bubble pop, all the sounds of the world came rushing back to her. The whistling of the wind, the murmur of ponies, the squeaking of wheels, and the sobbing words of a small little filly that was burying her face in Trixie's chest. Thanks. Apple Bloom choked out while Trixie stared down at her in complete befuddlement. What? Why? Huh? The overwhelming sensation of confusion quickly overshadowed every other emotion previously swirling in that overboiled witch's cauldron she called her brain. Apple Bloom hated her, right? Why was she clinging to her and crying? Was it a trick? Did Trixie do something she wasn't aware of? Did something happen? Trixie looked past Apple Bloom into the market crowd in a silent, desperate plea. Someone save Trixie. What is she supposed to do about this? No pony came to her rescue, or even appeared to notice her predicament. At a complete loss, Trixie sat back on her haunches and wrapped a hoof around the shaken filly and stroked her back awkwardly. There. Thankfully, the gesture seemed to have some kind of effect as the quakes that ran through Apple Bloom reduced to mere tremors. I never told no pony this before. Oh, thank the lucky stars. Perking up her ears, Trixie kept stroking the filly's back while she waited for Apple Bloom to tell her this thing. Whatever it was, maybe she could piece together what on earth was going on. However, Apple Bloom didn't say anything else for the longest time. Finally, she pushed herself away from Trixie and wiped her eyes, regaining some of her Beltero's composure in the process. You tell anyone else, and I'll never forgive you. You understand? She said with a hint of threat in her voice. The surprise must have been clear on Trixie's face, as Apple Bloom quickly followed up with a less presumptuous tone. So sorry. I guess you wouldn't. Nothing made any apple-bucking sense. Trixie wanted to just grab the filly by the shoulders and shake her till she started acting normal again. But, whatever the heck was going on, whatever happened, it looked like it was some kind of good thing. Apple Bloom seemed friendly. Of course, Trixie could ask. But, it looked as though Apple Bloom thought Trixie knew what she'd done. Whatever the thing was, it was positive, and admitting she had no idea what the thing was felt like it would jeopardize whatever was causing this sudden amiability. No, admitting Trixie was clueless was not an option. Trixie, won't tell. Naturally. She ventured, carefully. It seemed to please her as she showed a smile. It struck Trixie that this was the first time the filly had ever smiled at her. It was a melancholy feeling, as she had no idea what she'd done to earn it. After another moment of this, it suddenly dawned on Trixie that she was currently in the back of a dark alley, holding a little filly whom she had no relation to. She most definitely didn't need any additional misunderstandings adding to her already dismal reputation. As soon as she realized it, she let go and took a quick step back. Well, how about we go find Applejack? Yes. That. Trixie is sure she must be worried sick. Fortunately, Apple Bloom nodded in agreement. Yeah, I reckon you're right. She allowed herself to be led out of the alley by Trixie. As she trotted after her, she spoke up. You really ain't as bad as most ponies say. Sorry for taking so long to figure out. That's alright, Trixie said while she navigated her way through the market with the filly in tow. Most ponies don't take the time to talk to Trixie. By now, she'd worked out that whatever happened must have involved Apple Bloom having a weirdly one-sided conversation with her while she was outside the sound barrier. Somehow or another, the filly had failed to notice that Trixie wasn't hearing a word she said. Yeah, you're right, Apple Bloom said as though she'd just received some kind of golden wisdom. She had a thoughtful look on her face as she mused to herself. Maybe some pony should just talk to her too. Her? Trixie asked, then quickly bit her tongue. Stupid. What if she told Trixie about this pony? Zecora, the witch. Phew, close one. Trixie breathed a sigh of relief. What is it with you ponies and witches? Oh. Just as she was speaking of witches, Trixie spotted the most adorable witch in all of Ponyville, trying in vain to get out of a crowd of ponies gathered before a busy stall. I'm sorry, could I just... Oh, that's okay, I'll go after, can I, maybe? Oh, dear. Trixie reached behind her to take Apple Bloom's hoof in hers to ensure she wouldn't lose the filly, then turned her attention to the crowd. Move. With all the tact of a magically shielded minotaur, Trixie forcefully parted the sea of ponies as she marched straight at Fluttershy, grabbed her and plowed her way straight back out again. There you are, Fluttershy. Trixie was worried that... Well, exactly this was happening. You realize you have wings, yes. Struggling to keep up with Trixie's pace, Fluttershy babbled something only half coherent due to her voice consistently getting drowned out by the shouting merchants and haggling customers they passed. But Trixie surmised it was about Fluttershy preferring not to stand out too much by flying if she could help it. Not much further away, Trixie recognized the unmistakable apple stall and trotted right up. Hey, Applejack. Is this yours? She asked while magically lifting up a flailing Apple Bloom, depositing her behind the stall in her old spot. Hey! Apple Bloom shouted while she ran around the stall back to Trixie. Do that again. Apple Bloom. You run off like that again, you can forget about getting your own apron next time. After determining to her satisfaction that our little sis was fine, Applejack turned back to Trixie with a smile. Sorry for the trouble, Trixie. Mighty kind of you to help her get back. I could have found my own way back. Apple Bloom protested without even missing a beat while Trixie levitated her off the ground again and floated her over the stall a second time. Ain't like I need an escort to go anywhere else. Hush, you. Applejack plucked her impudent sister out of the air and planted her firmly back down on the ground. What possessed you to go chasing after them anyways? Trixie decided to interject. Applejack, Trixie has decided you may not be entirely wrong. Applejack raised a brow. Thanks? Ignoring the gesture, Trixie pressed on unabated. So Trixie has decided to allow you to witness a once-in-a-lifetime performance. Right now? Applejack asked incredulously. Yes. The great and all-knowing Trixie has been working on a new act. Your participation is vital. She could tell Applejack's apprehension a mile away. A fair sentiment perhaps, considering the last role Trixie imparted onto her during a performance. Fear not. All Trixie requires is your ear. Get your hooves away from there. Trixie snapped as Applejack swiftly covered her ears. Applejack didn't relent. Not till you tell me what you want with my ears. I'll like aimed the way they are. Trixie rolled her eyes. Just, forget it. Trixie was only going to say something nice about you, okay? Even as she said so, it was clear Applejack stayed wary, but lowered her guard at least some as Trixie continued. You. Let's see. You did some really nice rope tricks, for an earth pony. Not many could rival that. Maybe even including Trixie, which might be why she humiliated you instead. That wasn't right of her, and Trixie is sorry. After listening to Trixie's entire spiel, Applejack immediately turned towards Apple Bloom. All right, spit it out. What have you done with the real Trixie? Chapter 128. Reimburse. It was a beautiful day in Ponyville. Most of the clouds had been cleared or moved to adjacent regions that were scheduled for rain. Well, probably scheduled for rain anyway. Rainbow Dash might have given up on the whole reading request thing a little bit and just moved the clouds about at random. So far, no pony seemed to have noticed the difference. But they were going to notice this. Rainbow Dash did a final airborne pass, gleefully rubbing her hooves together as she oversaw the fruits of her labor. She'd skimmed a few clouds off of the top of each order she had pushed around today. Not enough to really be missed, but just enough for what she had planned. A large, puffy, and friendly-looking white cloud was positioned directly above Golden Oak's library. Rainbow Dash? A familiar voice called from below. Right on time. Oh, hey, Twi. Rainbow Dash called down with a wide grin. What do you think? Twilight trotted out the front door, trying to get a better look at the spherical cloud. It's pretty, I guess. But, what's it doing here? She had a disheveled look about her, as though she'd been up all night. It's a funny thing about clouds, Rainbow Dash mused. They're all white and puffy, right? But when we're moving we gotta be real careful, 'cause how we feel can make the cloud feel too. It's funny, right? Feeling clouds? I guess? Twilight looked confused. Perhaps being this tired made her slower than usual. However, soon enough comprehension dawned on her and she switched over to a lecturing face. I've read about this before. A Pegasus' emotional state can influence the properties of the clouds they come into contact with. It's sometimes used to produce the desired weather conditions, but it is considered unreliable because it is hard to alter your mood at will. You can't just decide to feel sad whenever you need to make a rain cloud, for example. Yeah, all that. I was totally gonna say that, for sure. Dash scratched the back of her head. She'd gone to school for this stuff and she still barely knew what Twilight was talking about. Still, the gist of it matched up to what she remembered. Like I said, clouds are funny things. That's great, Rainbow Dash, but I'm really busy right now. Can we do whatever this is some other time? I've got bigger concerns than clouds at the moment, I'm sorry. Twilight turned around to head back inside. Rainbow Dash zipped past her and then up towards the cloud. Come on, Twi. We're almost done. Hovering beside the puffy whiteness, she pressed a hoof against it. Almost immediately, the color of the patch she touched changed to a dark gray, which quickly spread through the rest of the cloud. A rumbling sound started up and within moments, the happy puffy cloud had turned into a huge thunder cloud, swollen with moisture and crackling with righteous thunder. There was no other cloud so ready to burst in the history of Ponyville, and it was positioned directly above Twilight's tree library home. With a clap of thunder, rain started pouring down, soaking Twilight along with everything within 20 feet of the library. Twilight stared wide-eyed at the transformation. That's incredible. How are you doing that so easily? Did you figure out how to separate the weather manipulation component from the emotional trigger? We should study that. Stay right there. I'll go get my electrodes and... What? No. Rainbow Dash dragged her hooves down her face. How is this not obvious? I'm mad at you. Already halfway back to the door, Twilight turned around to face Rainbow Dash again. She slicked back her soaking wet bangs, revealing a confused look on her face. Mad at me? Is this about that request for cloudless nights on Fridays? It's for stargazing and astronomy studies. Did you know Luna has been moving the... No. Rainbow Dash snapped. Gah, this is all Edge's fault. Applejack? Twilight looked even more lost than before. How did she get into this? I knew I should have just barked you in the face immediately. Now it's all weird cause it's been like 2 days already. She ignored the sudden step back and concerned look on Twilight's face. She was all golly, Dash, I done nothing I ought to be haste, eh? So I slept on it. I was still mad in the morning, but not so mad that I wanted to actually hurt you, well this. She pointed back up at the storm cloud and its relentless downpour. Twilight relaxed a little upon hearing Dash had apparently given up on the whole face-bucking plan. Oh, good. Well, not good, but, thank you. Look for what it's worth, I think it makes a good practical demonstration of your feelings. Much better than hating me. I can't stress that enough. Now, what are you mad about? Trixie. I heard what you did to her and well, she looked back up at the thundercloud and stared at it as though she was trying to remember just what her plan was. I guess I thought I'd feel better. Do you? Twilight asked while blinking against the rain as she tried to look up at Rainbow Dash. You don't look like you feel better. Dash shook her head violently. No. But, I'm sure I'll any second now. It'll definitely kick in once you're cold and miserable. Twilight rolled her eyes and turned around. Okay, have fun. I'm going back inside, where it's warm and dry. Hey. Rainbow Dash darted down to fly alongside Twilight as she trotted toward the door. Come on, Twi, you're ruining it. I worked hard on this. I'm sorry, Twilight said while stepping over the threshold, leaving the rain, but it's not my fault your big revenge plan is foiled by foliage. I know I went a little too far, but my mind hasn't changed. I'm sorry I accused her without any solid evidence, however I am almost sure she was involved with that spellbook somehow. Now if you don't mind, I'm in the middle of an intense investigation to prove it. No thundercloud is going to keep me from bringing this book thief to justice. Dash hovered outside the door, trying to ignore the rain beating down on her as she glared down at Twilight. Oh, yeah? Well, I bet if I leave it here you'll be sorry. If I am, I'll let you know. Twilight shut the door. The Ponyville Town Hall. Apparently, seeing the mayor wasn't as simple as merely walking in and demanding to speak to her. No, of course not. Trixie should have expected she would be detained immediately for daring to do so. Okay, technically a waiting room was not a jail cell. At least they brought you water and bread in jail. No, a waiting room was all the boredom, uncomfortable furniture, unsavory fellow inmates, and outdated reading material, without a thud of a metal cup to rattle along the bars. Trixie absent-mindedly took a bite from one of the sweet apples Applejack had given her to sustain her through these trials. Well, maybe not specifically for the purpose, but she was very insistent that Trixie had earned them after returning Apple Bloom. The filly had been in a much better mood than before. After all, that was the deal, even though Trixie had no idea why they were apparently friends now. It was all good, though. Trixie liked apples and apples. They had a straightforward, rustic quality that Trixie could appreciate. Even more so than other fruits and earth ponies. I'm sure everything will be fine. In the seat next to her sat her unshakable pillar of support. For all her assurances, Fluttershy had the kind of poise and cool that really made Trixie look at ease by comparison. It wasn't any wonder, considering that Fluttershy took to conflict like a duck to tartar sauce. Trixie pulled Fluttershy against her with a flourish. Of course it will. Trixie will even keep the yelling down to a minimum, just for you. There's nothing to worry about. Their eyes met for a long, uncertain moment before Fluttershy finally nodded. Okay, but maybe you should have brought Rainbow Dash? I don't think I can. I'm sorry. Dash, you would just share Trixie's jail cell. We need your non-threatening presence. Trixie wished she had something more reassuring to say, but the truth was she too would have felt a whole lot better if Rainbow Dash was with them. Unfortunately, her office was empty when they swung by on the way here, though they did spot a large thundercloud being moved through the sky. It seemed a safe bet to assume Dash was far too busy with managing that. "The mayor will see you now," a dull-colored mayor said, motioning towards the ominously looming door at the far end of the waiting room. "Alone?" Quietly. Trixie narrowed her eyes at the impudent clerk. "Who are you to presume to tell the great and powerful Trixie in what manner she is to approach or conduct herself? Trixie will do as she pleases." She turned to grab Fluttershy, but one look at those big, worried eyes of hers and the flash of indignant anger in Trixie crumbled into concern. Maybe she shouldn't be dragging her into more trouble than was necessary. "You, hold down the fort here. Like we planned." "Yes. Trixie will talk to the mayor one-on-one." "But, weren't we going to?" "Piff?" Fluttershy meekly protested till Trixie gently silenced her with a hoof against her lips. SHH. Trixie would have given the world to hush Fluttershy in a slightly different way, but she didn't want to break her again. "You secure the perimeter." She turned back to glare at the clerk as she finished with extra emphasis, like we planned. The clerk rolled her eyes in defeat and slinked off to whence she came. Triumphant, Trixie made her way to the door, taking one last look back at Fluttershy. She looked like a lost puppy. Flashing her a reassuring smile, Trixie said, "Trixie will be right back." Then, she pushed through the door. The sight that greeted her had Trixie feeling as though she'd stepped back through time. The office was eerily quiet and shadowy, the shades were drawn. A large desk featured prominently in the middle of the room, behind which an older pony flipped through papers with a casual disinterest. In front of the desk was a stool, presumably meant for Trixie to sit on, providing a stark contrast with the large, comfy chair the mayor was settled into. It did not escape Trixie's notice that the seat of the chair was higher than that of the stool, meaning a seated visitor would always be looking up at the mayor. An obviously transparent intimidation tactic. All of these things might have made an ordinary pony break their stride. However, no normal ponies had ever attended regular after-school magic classes in the profoundly creepy office of Professor Silence. Trixie knew she had to strike quickly. If she didn't establish dominance, then it was likely her next few nights would be in a jail cell. Without slowing down, Trixie trotted past the stool towards the desk. Once there, she reared up and placed her front hooves on the edge of the desk, raising herself up higher. With a smirk, she stared down at the surprised face of the mayor. "You have waited long, but at last you have the privilege of meeting the great and powerful Trixie in person. Rejoice." Mayor flinched back and held her head in her hooves with a pained grimace. SHH. SHH. Didn't Miss Sugarplum tell you to be quiet? Oh, my head. Trixie blinked. Are you drunk? Any atmosphere of intimidation the room might have held was quickly deflating. What? Mayor said, flabbergasted. No. Fine, not now obviously. Trixie rolled her eyes. Cranky ponies were such sticklers for detail. Now you're just hungover. No, I'm tired. I've not had a wink of sleep in weeks. Do you have any idea what I've dealt with? The sunrise celebration preparation and fallout. Nightmare. I mean, the return of Princess Luna. Sleepless apple farmers, whom I am understanding much better now by the way. Abusive griffins. Cranky Ursa Majors. Honest-to-goodness dragons roosting nearby and... Minor, Trixie interjected. What? It was an Ursa Minor. It was also just a minor correction, but Trixie figured it had to help her case to point out she couldn't be accused of bringing a full-on Ursa Major down on the town. And it didn't even really do anything. Well. Except... Trixie lost steam as her wrecked wagon came to mind. I feel as though you may be missing the overall point, ma'am. Mare pushed her glasses a little higher up her nose as she seemed to finally focus on Trixie for the first time since she entered the room. There's no need to blow it out of proportion. Besides, you say all this as if you had to deal with all that, but Trixie is certain you were not even involved in any of that. It is unbecoming of you to take credit for handling the princess, the Ursa or the dragon. You should try to be more honest. Stuck somewhere between outrage and incredulity, the mayor stared open-mouthed at Trixie. After a few soundless false starts, she finally found her voice again. I'm sorry. Did you readjust? You know what, never mind. No, I am not taking credit for the act of dealing with those events themselves. I don't know why I am even explaining myself. Did you think every pony just shrugs this off? I've had a near non-stop conga line of ponies in here each time asking about everything from decreased property value to crisis management plans. Have you ever tried planning for the unexpected? It can't be done. And deductible therapy bills. Or, on some rare occasions, hysterical purple ponies demanding I sign a form to turn the library into a fortress and refuse to leave till the early morning. Mare stood in her chair and breathed heavily. She looked out of focus again, seemingly suffering some sort of flashback. Trixie had nothing to do with any of that. She cautioned. Especially that last one. Huh? She snapped back to reality and slowly sank back into her seat. Right, yes. Sorry. It's been a stressful couple of weeks. Through no fault of Trixie's. Let's keep that in mind here. Trixie urged. Yes, Mare echoed tiredly. I mean. Yes. Why are you here again? It dawned on Trixie that not only had she lost her momentum, but she also didn't have a plan. In hindsight, formulating an approach before she actually went to visit the mayor would have been the same thing to do. Sure, she thought to bring Fluttershy, but moral support didn't equate to a plan. It had never crossed her mind to actually prepare for the most important part. She could feel sweat starting to dampen the fur on her forehead as she tried her best to look more in control than she felt. At least the mayor didn't seem any more on top of things than she was. Well, you asked for Trixie. Yes. Nurse Redheart told Trixie you asked to be informed when Trixie was well. Trixie is informing you. Oh, yes. Of course. The mayor actually offered up a smile. That's good then. Did the Ursa injure you? I was never informed how you ended up in the hospital. There was an interesting idea. If she claimed the Ursa had hurt her, they probably wouldn't pile any heavy punishment on top of that, would they? Yes, it was the Ursa's fault. She was pretty sure that only Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy knew the truth anyway. Besides, it wasn't really lying. If the Ursa Minor had never shown up, none of this would have happened. It was definitely the Ursa's fault. Is that so? I'm glad to see you recovered so well. Mare's eyes held an alert glint that definitely wasn't there before. She pulled open a drawer and rummaged through it. Trixie's ears perked up. She could make out a metallic sound, like guffs. After a moment, the mayor re-emerged, holding a notebook that she proceeded to reflect through. Now, as I understand it, during the attack here, stage wagon was destroyed. Naturally, I've taken this into account already, but I wasn't aware you were hurt. Trixie, appreciates that. There was an uncomfortable lump in Trixie's throat as she watched the mayor write something down in the notebook. Don't forget that Trixie came here. That was it then. She'd done all she could think of to express any possible mitigating circumstances. She just had to hope that wasn't only a thing in novels. Why didn't Trixie remember to steal a book on law while she was breaking in anyway? I can see that, the mayor mumbled while she studied her notes. Part of Trixie nagged at her to pull a disappearing act. To try and avoid any punishment. But, that wasn't what she was here for. Taking a shuddering breath, Trixie closed her eyes. If she was going to stay in Ponyville, no stay with Fluttershy and Dashy, then there was only one thing left for her to say. Trixie will accept whatever you deem appropriate. Well, that makes this easier. The mayor clapped her notebook shut and the scraping of wood indicated the drawer opened again. All right, here are your bits, ma'am. A clear, metallic clinking sounded at the tabletop. Trixie blinked stupidly at the sack of bits and gems between them, glimmering in the faint light of the room. Dumbfounded, Trixie pried her gaze away from the treasure pile, looking Mayor in the eyes. Really? Yes, ma'am. The notebook received a final few quill marks then disappeared into the drawer, which promptly shut. That, Trixie swallowed and looked around, expecting some sort of SWAT team to come out of the walls now that her guard was down. When no such teams appeared, she turned back to the mayor. That's really it? Yes, the mayor replied, tilting her head in confusion. Unless I missed something? Oh, of course, don't worry about the hospital bill. So. Trixie went quiet as she struggled to find a diplomatic way of asking what she really wanted to know. She couldn't find one. When she couldn't control her nerves any longer, she snapped and started just rattling off a list. No prison time? No stoning, or public shaming? No. Ma'am. Interrupted the mayor, her eyes wide in shock. We both know what those two cults did was wrong, but do you really think they deserve something as bad as that? You said it yourself, ultimately the Ursa was at fault here. You can't be. You're just messing with Trixie now. She pointed her hoof at the bag of wealth. That's Trixie's? Trixie is to take it and go home? What about Trixie lying about defeating an Ursa Major? Scrunching up her face, Mayor took off her glasses and rubbed her temples. Ma'am, I don't know how the laws work where you are from, but in Ponyville it is not illegal to tell tall tales. There'd be no pony left. Now, I am very busy. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. In my office, that is. Preferably not within earshot either, but I can't compel you to comply with that. With cautious optimism, Trixie lifted the bag off the table. It was heavy. As heavy as she thought a bag like that should be. Not that she had ever seen that much wealth put together in her life. She couldn't believe how lucky she was. Mayor had her sign a receipt, and that was it. The implications were slowly hitting her as she trotted out of the office and back into the waiting room. Only Fluttershy was there, still looking every bit as nervous as before. And then, Trixie woke up. That is to say, she woke up to the notion that this was all really happening. It was real. Trixie didn't have to go to jail, or Tartarus, or Saddle Arabia. She wouldn't have to leave the two ponies that had come to mean the world to her. She could go home with Fluttershy. She didn't have to be so scared anymore. Trixie had more bits than she knew what to do with. Finally, she could stop leeching off of Fluttershy's kindness. She didn't have to feel so guilty anymore. Trixie? Fluttershy was suddenly standing mere inches away from her, eyes wide with concern. Trixie, what's wrong? What happened? Are you okay? It was only when Trixie saw herself reflected in Fluttershy's eyes that she understood the worry in the sweet Phyllis voice. Tears of relief were streaming down Trixie's cheeks as she felt so many fears just wash away. Struggling for words, she couldn't think of any way to express the sheer joy welling up inside her except for one. Trixie leaned in and kissed Fluttershy. Trixie is not okay. Her voice cracked pathetically, but she didn't care. She's great. And powerful.